The lake house had been empty for over a decade, left to sink into silence beneath the whispers of wind and ripple of distant water. Ivy threaded through its clapboard walls, and the dock had partially collapsed into the lake, leaving jagged wood slats like broken teeth. When Caroline inherited it from her grandmother, she barely remembered the summers spent there. Only snippets: wet grass underfoot, the metallic scent of the lake, her grandmother muttering to herself behind closed doors. Still, something about the untouched stillness called to her. She drove up alone, determined to spend a week in peace, unplugged from noise, work, and obligations. Peace, as it turned out, was the last thing the lake house had to offer. Inside, the air held a damp, loamy scent, like rotting leaves sunk beneath the lake. Dust filmed over everything. Furniture trapped mid-conversation, photo frames askew, a teacup left half full on a doily-marked side table. She walked through, fingers grazing surfaces, noticing things she couldn't remember being part of her childhood. Like the faded pattern of a rug she could have sworn was once bright, or the painting of the lake above the fireplace, where waves bent in unnatural directions, sky blackened as if scorched. There were doors she couldn't recall, like one at the end of the second-floor hall. It was locked, of course. She tried the handle twice, both times more out of irritation than curiosity. It didn't budge. Still, a low vibration thrummed through the metal, a pulse woven into the wood, like the door had been waiting for someone to return. That night, sleep came in fractured pieces, voices sliding at the edge of hearing, like murmurs across a frozen lake. At one point, she woke mid-dream, convinced someone had been tugging at her sheet. Thunder boomed outside, but no lightning followed. She rose, wandering barefoot through the house, compelled toward that same door. She placed her palm flat against it. Cold, but strangely damp. Heavy silence pressed from the other side. From beneath the door, a sliver of movement caught her eye, not shadow, not light. Something denser, slow. It traced along the gap, then withdrew when she stepped closer. Caroline whispered something then, not a word but a shape her mouth made without her permission. It tasted of iron and rot. The next morning, the lake was gone. She stared from the kitchen window, coffee turning cold in her hands, and saw only dry, cracked earth where water should have been. The dock lay warped on the ground like the skeleton of some stranded beast. No mist, no fog, no smell of algae or the coughing of frogs. Just silence so complete it weighed on her shoulders. At breakfast, the radio she found in an old cabinet turned itself on without a power source. Faint static poured out. Then, a voice. It whispered her name over and over, each time more distorted, until it sounded more like a plea than a greeting. She tried to leave that day, but the gravel road had disappeared behind her car. Woods grew dense and thick where the path had been, and the trees leaned just slightly inward, as if listening. She started to forget simple things. How long she'd been there. Whether it was morning or evening when she looked out the window. The clocks ticked out of sync, and her own reflection began to lag behind her movements, just a fraction off. Once, when she passed the mirror in the hallway, her reflection smiled even though she hadn't. Her phone showed no signal, no battery, and eventually, no time. At night, the door at the end of the hall trembled, then whispered things back to her in her own voice, warped and off-tempo. She found herself answering without knowing what she was saying. Once, she woke at the threshold, keys in hand, though she didn't remember where she got them. The keyhole burned with cold when she touched it. On the sixth night, the lake returned. She heard it before she saw it, the shifting, breathing silence of water moving through the reeds. But when she looked again from the kitchen window, it was not the lake she remembered. The water lay still, black as ink, surface too perfect. Shapes stirred beneath. Elongated limbs too smooth to belong to fish, and vacant, pale eyes just barely breaking the surface. That night, the door opened by itself. She didn't see it open, only heard its whispered creak and turned to find it ajar. Behind it, Absolute darkness stretched like a tunnel with no end. Her own voice called gently from within. Only, it wasn't quite her voice. It was too calm, too patient, and it sounded like it had been waiting a long time. She stepped forward, barefoot, lips parted to speak, then halted. From the darkness, something stepped out. It looked like her. It smiled. And then it whispered, "You took too long."